I've got a pullover to show you. It can also be a hoodie. The most interesting shawl collar technique and pockets you will see. Looks harder than it really is, and of course I'm showing you how to do that. Sneak peek. Hi sewing friends, I'm Karina from liftingpinsandneedles.com. Welcome to this channel that is all about sewing, limitless sewing, and today is about cozy sewing. I've got a pullover or hoodie to share with you. It has been a while since I've done a proper video for Feature Friday, and this is what this is today. Love Notions has re-released the Whistler pullover and hoodie. It's been redrafted, remade, everything to include sizes up to 5X. Full bust option has been included and a few more features than the previous older pattern had. Really exciting to sew this up. It actually is one of the few patterns I hadn't sewn yet from Love Notions. I was just waiting for the right time. Of course, this is the right time because this pattern is only $5 today, Friday. It will have a shorter period of a sale for the re-release. So it will be $5 today, Friday, and then Saturday and Sunday, it will be marked 25% off. So it's better to get it today if you like it because it is 60% off today. The Whistler is a pullover or hoodie depending on the neckline option you choose, and it's meant to be loose fitting but not that oversized. There is shaping there, so it's not like you're wearing a tent or a box, something with no shaping, but it's not tightly fitted to your body. You are meant to wear something underneath. This is for layering, so you will have positive ease there. There is an inset yoke here on the center front of the body that ends around the bust area depending on your height. I don't think there is an actual specific place it will hit because it depends on your body, but it'll be around the bust area there. It's a small section in the center, and what comes in the center varies. It can be either a shawl collar or a hoodie. The construction method is the same, but it will just look different here up on the top. Then you have side front pieces, and this is where it gets super interesting because you will see a curved seam on both of these sides. There is a pocket that goes in there, but the pocket bags are included in the center front and the side front pieces. Very interesting technique, fun to sew, something different that actually looks harder than it is. It's not hard, I promise. The center front piece on this pattern can be made either flat, or you have a different cut line there where you place on the fold further away and you can get gathers there. Of course, it's got long sleeves, and to finish the hem you have a cuff. And as for the lengths, you can have a shirt length or a tunic length, and that has separate pattern pieces, or you can have a dress length and that has a totally separate piece. They are a little bit different, but they are sort of the same on the top. They differ down below in the ears, the hips, the width of the dress and everything. I have all of them printed out, and I have a special plan for the dress version, but for later on. For now, I've made the shirt length and I've chosen the shawl collar option. In the front of this collar piece, this inset yoke, you can choose to put buttons there or not. The pattern has marks for you to put them there. You can put 2 or 3 or 1, it's up to you, or you can leave it without a button. That is totally optional. I would just sew the buttons through. I wouldn't bother doing buttonholes or anything like that. Just make it easier. You need medium to heavyweight knits with at least 25% stretch horizontally, so it doesn't need to stretch that much. And this is where I have a hard time finding fabrics, but you need French terry, micro fleece, sweatshirting material, sweater materials, all those cozy things. Ponte would also work. Now I have chosen a sweater knit that I had in my stash. I've made a garment with this one in the past, but I always knew I could make something else because I'd purchased quite a lot of yardage. It's green, it's very beautiful. You'll see it up close when I'm sewing. And it does have the recommended stretch. You want to make this with a very heavy fabric. You might want to size up. If you're making something in a really heavy fabric, I'm assuming you live in colder weather and that you're going to be wearing something underneath. Remember, when you're making clothes, the thicker the fabric is, the smaller the space you will have inside anyway, because the fabric takes up space. You know, when you work with thinner fabrics, you have more space inside. You might want to consider sizing up if your fabric is super heavy, super thick, super bulky, you know. Remember I mentioned that the center front can be either flat or gathered. If you're working with very heavy fabric, I would stay away from gathers at the front. I just think it would be very bulky. That center seam there is bulky to begin with, even with the flat front there. Imagine adding gathers there. So I would just think about that according to the fabric you're using. But as an aesthetic preference, I do prefer the flat front. I don't prefer the gathers there, but it is an option. I like options because there are people who like that. Having the freedom to choose is awesome. As I mentioned, the pattern has been re-released, redrafted, and the sizes improved now to the full size range up to 5X. The upper measurements are a bust of 57.5 and a hip of 59.5. There is a standard bust and a full bust option. I always choose the standard bust If the difference between your high bust and your full bust is 4 inches or more, you would get a better fit with the full bust option. You don't need to do full bust adjustments. It is a roomy design. It's not boxy though. You will have positive ease at the bust and hips about the same amount, about 6.5 to 7 inches. And I've chosen to make a size large because I want a little bit less positive ease at the bust. My body measurements right now are fitting into the size extra large, but I chose to make a large around here and then blend to an extra large at the hips because I won't be wearing this with a lot of layers underneath. It'll probably just be a cami, and I prefer a slightly more fitted look here on the top. So that's just personal preference and me playing with sizes. You can do that or not do that depending on how many risks you want to take. I'm pretty happy with making those adjustments on the fly because I've been sewing Love Notions patterns so much. I sort of know that they fit me if I do that. I've got a paper towel here. It is, yeah. On the Love Notions YouTube channel, you will find several videos on the Whistler hoodie with tutorials that you can see to see how to sew the collar and the pockets, or that's on the YouTube channel from Love Notions. Sometimes there's specific areas there in the construction that I flip and do the other way. Just minor differences to what the pattern has. In Up Close and So Personal, you'll see the shawl collar, the pockets, all that centerpiece sewn. But let's hop into all the sewing.
Don't you think this is starting to wear on me? You've been rated down like hell. I'm weak.
For the shawl collar, you cut this pattern piece twice. They're mirrored, so you have 4 pieces, and along one of the ends is wider than the other. On that wide end that is slightly curved, you sew that together, both of them with 3/8 seam allowance. Then you're gonna end up with this long piece like that. Let's pretend that's been already sewn with the sewing machine. It hasn't, it's just pinned. You will put both of these long pieces right sides together. One of the sides has a curve going up and the other side is just straight. The side that has the curve is the one that you need to sew together all along the top end like that, and that will form the top part of the shawl collar. Very easy, 2 short seams and then 1 long seam. Now I'm actually sewing these short seams together from the shawl collar. These are the wider ends of this piece. It's got a really strange shape, but it'll make sense later. I'm sewing these seams with 3/8 seam allowance. After doing that, I will extend these 2 long pieces and place them right sides together, matching along the curved edge. That is the side that needs to be sewn now with 3/8 seam allowance. At the center, you will have those seams meeting. I have pressed them open and it can get a little bit bulky there. After sewing this long seam together, having those seams open there, if you open it, it looks like that. This is the center, and so this would be the shawl collar later. I am going to do one thing though. I don't want to just top stitch this down. I don't want there to be a visible seam on my shawl collar. So what I'm going to do is understitch that instead. It doesn't matter which side I choose. I'll just choose one of these sides and push the seam allowance to one side and sew that seam allowance down on the edge. What that'll do is make the seam go inside, and when I wear the shawl collar, it will be hidden inside. So one will act as like the outer layer and one like the inner layer. This is how it looks when it's all neat and pressed. These seams are meeting each other there, wrong sides together. The side that I understitched is the one I have facing up towards me. That's the side that's going to be folded to the back. Now you see this curved shape. You just need to fold that in like that. That is what is actually going to be the shawl collar, that folded edge. And then this will come over and be like that. So you can see the shawl collar forming there. And in here, there's a mark on the pattern. That is where the edge of this one needs to reach. And then that gets pasted on at the bottom. When you overlap the bottom of the shawl collar, one of them has to meet that notch. The notch will be on the inside, so I'm just showing you that it's right there. This is quite a bulky seam. There are quite a few layers with this overlap. These are 2 pattern pieces that will make up the front of the Whistler. And this one here is cut on the fold. Depending if you want the center front to have gathers, you would have had a cut line on the pattern that was slightly wider. I folded that away to just have a flat front there underneath that shawl collar piece. So this actually goes open like this. These little rectangles coming from there are actually the pocket bags, and this is the center front. Up on the top is where these 2 Up on the top is where the shawl collar piece will be sewn onto that center front, right sides together, straight there. Then there's these two front pieces. These are pocket bags also. These need to be sewn onto the back at the shoulder seams right there. And then once the back is sewn onto there, we can assemble it with that. Here is the center front pinned to the shawl collar piece, right sides together. I know this is the right side because this is the side that overlaps up to there. And it's a really bulky seam, it's really thick, lots of layers. So I'm using a straight stitch and I'm using a pretty long stitch length for it to cope with the layers. This is the shawl collar sewn on that short seam in the center. I'm doing the flat front there. There's also that gathered option, but I prefer the flat front. These are pocket pieces there. And what I have over here is just the front and the back sewn together at the shoulder seams. Now you're going to let the back hang all the way down and you're just going to be working with the front for now, just to align these. And we have those pockets there and they match right there, and this one over here as well. I'm zooming in so you can see that dot there, and at the back here you will have a dot there as well. On this section you need to snip into that dot so that this can open up. When this can open up, that means that you can pivot there and then keep pinning all this all the way up the top. It's just that basically this is the neckline that will match all the edge of the shawl collar there, but for that to happen, that little pivot point is important, and that snip right there on the center front piece there. This is looking pretty crazy. I started pinning from the edge down both of the pockets. Now on the center front here is where I snipped. This is the center front where I had a dot and I snipped into that dot. You can see that's cut there. That allows that to extend and you can keep pinning there. There is the dot from the pocket piece, and here is the dot that was snipped in. So that extends and you can sew there really carefully. Sewing this will be one continuous seam from here on the edge. This is the side seam up to the pocket, pivot, down, pivot, 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 all the way around the neckline, down to this pocket, pivot, 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 all that. And up here on the top, I'll show you, along this side front piece, there's a notch. You can see that yellow mark there. That should meet that seam there that unites this center piece to the shawl collar. So those match exactly right there. Up here further, you'll find the notch there that matches the shoulder seam. You can see there. Then you match your center back of the shawl collar to the center back of the neckline. And here is the other shoulder seam with the other notch right there. So it's very easy. It just takes a while to pin it all. But now I'm going to go ahead and sew it. This is the corner from the center front piece where I snipped into. You can see that opens up the seam and it matches the dot on the other side. Just on this small area, I'm going to be sewing this from this side so I can see and I can control and not get a pucker there. Otherwise, for the rest, I have my pins on the other side. But I'll get this out of the way on both sides first, and then I can relax, and all the rest is just straight seams. So that area was sewn, and now I can just repeat that on the other side, and then I can just continue sewing all the rest, pivoting it all 3/8 seam allowance. Here is that little corner at the back there is where I've snipped. This is why I wanted to sew this area from this side, having this side up. This section is already sewn. I'm just going to stop there where it started and that will complete, and then I'll pick up there and keep going. Here is that center front seam and the shawl collar there. That one is underneath and there's a notch that matches there. Here is the shoulder seam and at the back there's a notch. Here is the other shoulder seam. We have all the shawl collar underneath. Here we're going down the other side, and here is the seam on the front here, but on the other side, going down the center front. This is where the other snip was. So this is already partially sewn. Again, I'm going to sew up to there and then pick up from there and keep going. After sewing all this, I'm going to try and serge as best I can. I won't be able to go right into there to serge, but as much as I can. All that super long seam has been sewn. It includes the pockets here. It's easier than you think. The only area to be careful with is that area here that you snip and that you need to pivot there. Otherwise, it's just a really long seam and things that you need to match. Okay, so everything's looking like a hot mess right now, but you can see how you have that seam there, the shawl collar, that center front area, and you have a curve there. This is the section where we did that pivot and snip, and then this is where the pockets are. The pocket bags are behind there. It's very similar to the octave coat, very, very similar. Very fun to sew. So I'll just keep sewing this like normal. I like sewing my sleeves on the round, so next I'll sew the side seams and then insert the sleeve, the cuff, the hem. That's it. These types of designs are really hard to show really nicely on a hanger, but hey, that's what I do. I don't have a mannequin, so there you go. It's really hard to see it nicely on a hanger, that's what I'm saying. This is the shawl collar there. I've tried to fold it as neatly as I can. Here is that inset yoke right there. Now this can be either the shawl collar or the hoodie. I've chosen the shawl collar, and you can see that this is overlapped. Not to the edge, there is a notch there on the pattern that shows you where to align that to, so it doesn't reach the full end, and then you can have the option of putting buttons. I sewed my buttons through. I don't have buttonholes, anything like that. And then here comes this area here, and this is where the pocket starts. This is the section that was snipped on the center front piece so that this seam could extend and you can keep sewing it onto the side front. You saw how I did that. It was very fun. And then this folded edge here is just the entrance of the pocket. Pocket bags are in there. Very cool. Very similar to the octave coat. I had so many moments where I was like, I've done this before. I loved sewing the octave coats. There is the center seam. This is where this can be gathered if you want to. It's an option. At the bottom, I chose the regular hem. I didn't do the band. You can do a band if you want to. I actually might go ahead and put the band now that I've tried it on. I'll have to think about that. I do have fabric left. I could easily just undo the hem and sew on the band later. Long sleeves with the cuffs. Very nice. The back is cut on the fold, so there's not much to see on the back. There is the center back of that shawl collar. Those were the two short seams we sewed at the beginning when we were putting it together. And I want to show you how this looks inside. Maybe you can see the bright green serger thread. Now, everything can be super well serged. Because this seam is extended, you can serge that no problem. But on the corner of this pocket, I found it difficult to overlock really neatly. I had to do like a little curve. No worries though, because knit fabrics don't usually fray. If you're working with a delicate fabric and you think you might have an issue there, I would go ahead and reinforce that area by hand, because it's actually impossible to sew a corner on the serger on that little shape. But this fabric will be fine, it's not going to come apart, and that's how it looks inside. You can see the pocket bag going there. You can see that my pocket piece almost reaches the hem, and that's because I cut my hem where the band was supposed to be, and then I decided to just hem it normally because I've been undecided. You can't really make the shirt length really short because it will involve the pocket pieces and things like that. So I wouldn't be modifying the length down here below. If I were you, I would just leave it original, unless you want pocket bags poking from behind. I am positively melting, and I have just put this on for you and filmed myself, and yeah, I can't wait until April gets here because that's when I'm going to start sewing all these items that I'm showing you. I am in the Southern Hemisphere. I know the large majority of you who watch this channel are in the Northern Hemisphere. So that's why I'm making cold weather things right now. This is a Whistler from Love Notions. It can be either a pullover with a shawl collar or a hoodie. I've done the shawl collar. This is a green sweater knit. You can make the hem banded or just normal. Mine is normal, and there's these really interesting pockets in here, and the construction is very interesting as well. I've got it with my glissando linen skirt in brown with some heels. Love how brown and green looks together. A bit different to the bold things I usually wear. Up closer you can see more of the details. It is a solid, so I hope you can see the details. You can see that the front has a center front piece underneath the shawl collar piece right there. In my case, this is hitting right at my bust height right there. It's not lower or higher than that, so it's right there. It will depend on your body how this fits you. The sides come from the shoulder and come here, and it's got to do with the pocket construction because the pocket bags are in there as well as part of these pattern pieces. I hope you can see the details there a little bit better. The curve, this is where the pocket starts, this is where it finishes, and then you have a section that is sewn and then attached to the side seam right there. The sleeves have cuffs, and I cut my top at the length where you would add the band, so a little bit shorter. There is another line a bit lower for the regular hem, but I wanted my pullover to end right there. You can't make it shorter than this though, because look, the pocket bags are right underneath. I think my hem is probably an inch longer than those pocket bags, so you can't really make it cropped or anything like that with this feature right there. I like the fit. It's not oversized, it's not fitted, it's just right. This is the shawl collar piece. It comes from here, it's folded back. You can put buttons here or not. I chose to put 2 there. If you don't put buttons, this will just open a little bit more, but I like the look with the buttons, so there you go. The buttons are offset to one side, they're not in the center. And here is that seam. This is the shawl collar piece. From here up, it's a double layer. The layer that's underneath is the one that I understitched when I showed you in the video. Otherwise, you can top stitch. I just didn't really want any top stitching here. And as the stitching will work really well to keep this inner layer inside, and it's just looking really smooth, so that was my option. There's no buttonholes here. The buttons are just sewn through all the layers. You can see the fit on the top is really good. I've used the standard bust. There is a full bust option if you have a larger sewing cup size, and I've got an L here on the top of me and then an extra large towards the hips. I blended sizes that way. Here you can see it closer, the seam coming there and then going horizontal, the buttons, the shawl collar. It's very clever, very fun to sew, and then the pockets down there. I'm glad I finally got to sew this pattern. It's really nice. Now it includes sizes extra large to 5X, so that's really good. And it's been redrafted, remade, re-released, all those things, and I'm glad I got the chance to sew it now. Now just to wait a couple more months until it gets cold so I can start wearing it. Super fun pattern to sew. I like sewing patterns that are not what you can see and sew regularly. You won't find a pattern like this around. I've never seen a pattern like this in any place. So very fun, very original design. I have plans to make a dress, as I mentioned, but I will make that when my winter time comes because I want to make it into a nightgown. I sleep with a hoodie on in the winter. It can get really cold at night, surprisingly, and we don't have any heating or anything that doesn't exist in these houses. So I like sleeping with a hoodie, and I think this would be really nice in a funky print as a nightgown with the hood. So I'll show you that when the time comes, but for now, I really enjoyed sewing this. Remember, it's only $5 today, Friday, and then Saturday, Sunday will be marked 25% off, and then it will go to the regular price. I hope you enjoyed watching this different technique. Very different, very fun. Only a little area of specific snipping to do there. Otherwise, pretty straightforward. I will see you again very soon with more sewing. Bye!